I want to start by saying that right now there is an overwhelming number of places that you can donate your time, your money, food, clothes, anything that you can think of. There are so many places that you can donate to. And there's also a ton of misinformation being spread around TikTok right now, if we're just being honest. Um, I don't know about the rest of the apps, but right now, like the algorithm on TikTok is filled with people who have really valuable and helpful information and people who are saying that nothing matters, the government is preventing aid from being brought in, blah, 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 blah. There's almost always a middle answer when it comes to two extreme opinions, so just keep that in mind. But for those of you who are looking to donate, here are the two organizations that I'm going to be donating to. I think that the more options we have, the more overwhelming it can be. And at the same time, if you look inward, you do get to ask yourself what resonates most with you. Um, and so, yes, that might be a bit of a self-centered way of going about this, but when we don't have all the information and we don't know how to make an answer, that usually leads people to making no answer at all, to taking no action and to just sitting down and doing nothing. So use your emotions in a logical way to help you make some sort of difference, something that will make you feel better, something that will also put a dent in someone's life somewhere. Again, all of the different resources that you might be hearing about of where you can donate, don't worry about the perfect one because there isn't a perfect one. To just choose one or two, donate your time or your money, and do what you can if you can. For the rest of this year and all of 2025, every single dollar that I make from any of my monthly workshops will be going to the Farmer Fund, which was created in 2015. It's a lifeline for farmers who are affected by natural disasters. I personally order groceries from Fresh Harvest, which is a southeastern local farm delivery to my door every week produce. I think farmers are one of the biggest backbones of our country, and that without them, we could not survive. And so this is the best way that I personally know how to give back at this time. Additionally, there is a content creator and therapist who is local to the Southeast as well, and he has a GoFundMe link going right now. And his money will be going toward local nonprofits and people directly in his area. The donations that he's collecting is going directly toward things like medical supplies, baby formula, food, diapers, gas, hygiene items, things like that. So I'll put his GoFundMe link there. I think, again, there's so many choices out there. And what I don't want is for anybody to feel overwhelmed or pressured into like just donating because someone's asking you. I want you to really just take a moment and consider why you want to put your money somewhere, and then use both information and emotion to build your intuition to help you make a choice on where you want to put your money. It's going to take years for this area to recover. I still don't think other areas in our country have fully recovered. And so here's the other thing too, like if you're in a place where you want to donate and you feel called to donate to a cause that's helping another part of the country, then do that. We just all need to come together right now and do what we can to be together and to support one another so that someone somewhere, their lives are just a little bit better because somebody who had more could give more. So, got the Farmer Fund, and we've got a GoFundMe that's going to the local community spearheaded by Patrick Cassell of the Divergent Conversations podcast.
The Chronic Illness Therapist podcast is meant to be a place where people with chronic illnesses can come to feel heard, seen, and safe while listening to mental health therapists and other medical professionals talk about the realities of treating difficult conditions. This might be a new concept for you, one in which you never have to worry about someone inferring that it's all in your head. We dive deep into the human side of treating complex medical conditions and help you find professionals that leave you feeling hopeful for the future. I hope you love what you learned here, and please consider leaving a review or sharing this podcast with someone you love. This podcast is meant for educational purposes only. For specific questions related to your unique circumstances, please contact a licensed medical professional in your state of residence. All right, Lauren, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Yeah.
I would love to learn a little bit more about where you are, who you work with, and we can kind of start there.
Sure. So I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and I work with a lot of neurodiverse folks, chronically ill folks, LGBTQ folks, people who are interested in like fat liberation work. Those are like my big niche areas. And I do talk therapy as well as art therapy.
I'm really looking forward to talking about art therapy. We've had a few episodes around art therapy, but I don't know. I'm just so fascinated by it. Are you an art therapist? Like you're licensed that way, or yeah? Okay.
So I'm a clinical mental health counselor and art therapist.
Amazing. And you specifically like to work with phototherapy, and you have a group around this, right?
Yeah. So I do a lot of like regular art therapy, but yes, I do phototherapy as well. It's actually what my thesis was on. And my group is based on like creating hope for people who have chronic illness and reducing depression and anxiety through phototherapy. A lot of it is around making invisible illnesses visible and showing doctors what symptoms look like and feel like, and moving away from this like 0 to 10 pain scale, and giving people an opportunity to like really like express what the inside feels like. And those groups usually run like 10 to 15 sessions and they keep like rebooting over and over. So
That sounds really cool. Can you explain what phototherapy is for people who don't know?
sure. So it could be done like a myriad of ways, but the way that I do it the most is we use like a free app called like, or people could use Photoshop if they have that. And we create like essentially like photo collage. So you can use like pictures you've already taken, images that are like on your computer, stock photos. You can draw and like upload those in. And then I teach the skills to like use tools to make them one big cohesive image.
That's really cool. And I like what you said. It's moving kind of helps you move away from the pain scale, moving into what does this actually feel like? Because what is a number to pain? I don't understand. So can you talk to me a little bit more about like the process, or what would someone want to know if they were, calling you being like, I really want to know what this is and how this helps and yeah, what this looks like.
Sure. So phototherapy is great for people who might have like mobility issues or have a hard time navigating like tools for like fine art. A lot. And, you only really need like basic computer skills. I wish I could show you an example, but it really like, so I've had clients who have a lot of images they took in hospital stays or during medical procedures, like upload all of those and like put them into one cohesive image where like their MRIs are like transposed onto like their face or like things like that. And like really being able to like show what they feel like. Sometimes we even add sound. So like I've had clients, be able to go to the doctor and be like, this feels like nails going down a chalkboard, or this feels like, what this looks like. What does the texture look like? What is the, like, what is the, like, what does it feel like? So we're not just like, oh yeah, it's an 8, because chronically ill people, like our pain scales are totally different. We get used to it. So it's not like our 8s are very different than like anybody else's 8. So it really gives people an opportunity to like show what they're feeling every day and like what parts of their bodies are affected and like what their like daily experience living with that is like. So sometimes we do like body scans where we walk through like all the feelings and sensations, and then we create like textures and colors and images to show where all those sensations are like on the body. And then like everybody gets to share, like we do like worst symptom days, best symptom days. We do what think of the worst thing a doctor has said to you and like make a collage about that. Think of the best thing a doctor has said to you and make a collage about that. Like, and just like all different kinds of prompts to kind of just like really validate people's like lived experience in the medical system. So
I want to join this group. This sounds amazing.
You're more than welcome.
I love that. And is this therapy, or is it a support group like for people listening?
It's technically a support group.
Okay.
So every group I run is a support group, so that they are accessible nationwide.
Amazing. I'm still like, I'm imagining this collage. That's okay. I'm just imagining this collage, like, and I've seen collage work before, but I don't know, the way you just described all that feels really powerful.
Yeah. So just to kind of give you a little bit more imagery, my spouse had a stroke and was sent home with the stroke because the people in Savannah, it was
they weren't taking good care of this, my spouse. So they ended up doing a collage because somebody said to them, I think you should see an ophthalmologist instead of giving them an MRI for their stroke. So the collage was titled, I think you should go see an ophthalmologist. And it had the board with this doctor's name on it and their MRI showing the stroke and like a picture of them in the hospital. And it was just like the perfect capture of like that moment for them. And I had them do these collages, and then like I use them as examples for a lot of people. Like you can capture those moments where you're just like, you can't even make this up kind of moments, and like really put that into like an image for people to like see.
That is incredible. I can just feel how that would be, one, so validating, right? That's what a lot of us struggle with, is there is no validation. And people talk about like, I hate the whole like love yourself first. You have to love yourself or no one will. I think that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But what a way to self-validate without it feeling forced or without it feeling like lofty and like pie in the sky kind of thing. It's very tangible and very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And in like my group, like you can be mad, you can talk shit about all of your medical professionals, you can like rage against the system all you want, because like any chronic illness counselor is going to understand like it that's what it is, and like that's okay. Like we don't always have to be like rainbows and sunshines about it. Like that's, we can meet you where you're at and then hopefully make you feel better over time, to the best degree that we're able. But like there's a lot of space for like those big feelings because it is aggravating and it's not fair, and so
I know. I was just reading what is your take on DBT?
I do neuro affirming DBT in a way that is like inclusive and feels better. But that's like the really only realm I work with it in. I don't do it in any other capacity. So
yeah, I don't know, I was on Pinterest or something and like the Raven technique came up. So, and I was reading through, I try to keep an open mind about some like non-somatic approaches and people on this podcast know I'm like anti-CBT, and it's because of that. And sorry, I'm like gonna explain this a little bit more because a lot of like more and more recently, I've been getting a little bit more comfortable with kind of that thought reframing, and I realize there's a lot of room and space for that. That can be really helpful. But I think historically, it just has been used as a way to kind of make people conform, right?
Yep.
And just think the way that the majority thinks. And so I was looking at this Raven skill popped up for DBT, and it's like relax, take a deep breath, etc. Avoid negative habits, meaning like discounting yourself or other people or withdrawing, whatever. Validate, examine your values. I'm like, okay, great. Then I get to end, and it's like neutral voice, keep anger out of your voice. And I was like, what are you supposed to do with that anger? Like, it just blew my mind. So yeah, maybe we can go into that concept a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm also really anti-CBT. Don't get me wrong, like there's a couple of skills that are like okay that we could like pull out sometimes, but like it is the last resort for anyone. But no, like not even just with my chronically ill clients, just with like my clients across the board, like we make space for anger. I don't know how you couldn't, especially in like the country we live in, the world we live in, like we find ways to like express anger. You want to go throw plates in your backyard safely? Go throw plates in your backyard, punch your pillow, like really aggressively scribble into a book, yell in your car, scream to loud music. Like anger is a healthy emotion. It's usually telling you something. And it's usually that you've experienced some kind of injustice, at least in a lot of different scenarios. So no, we welcome anger. So.
Yes. What might that look like? Maybe you can kind of conjure this up for yourself. Like, what might anger look like on paper? Like, through phototherapy, or you can bring in any of the other art elements that you use.
Sure. One of the interventions that comes to my mind immediately is I do this one where you get a black pastel and a red pastel, or you can do any colors, but those are just the use. And like, cause pastels are really smushy and like malleable, and you like really just like run into the paper like as many times as you can, and you push away from you so you can like really get that like feeling out. So it's like kind of like art therapy meets somatics a little bit. And sometimes I bring in the somatics, but for collages, like you can do like different colors that you associate with anger, different imagery you associate with anger, and like putting it on top of like your whatever you're working on. But I really think like like the drawing and like the being able to like move your body, like bilateral drawing is really helpful for that too. So like it depends, I guess, what people are
Yeah.
working on.
And the other thing too, I think about like skills or because I'm a somatic therapist and I think I get a lot of clients coming in that are like, okay, so like what somatic work are we gonna do? Because they've seen like online different somatic exercises. But for me, it doesn't really work that way. So I'll be curious to know what your experience is. Like it doesn't work like, okay, come in, we're gonna do this skill to target this feeling and this emotion, and now you're gonna be good to go. It's more like when we're talking and I'm noticing emotion come up or I'm noticing that and then I'm noticing you suppress it. I might invite you to notice it a little bit more and then help you ground through that and then notice it some more. And so it really, in all honesty, can a lot of times just look like talk therapy.
Yes.
How does art therapy and talk therapy integrate? If you can explain it like yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of function like you do. Like I'll bring it up like when it seems like it's a good time to bring it up. So I have clients who don't want to do art therapy at all. And that's cool. They're probably not in a lot of my groups because a lot of my groups are arts based. So we might just talk. We might do a little bit of somatics. We might do like whatever feels right for that person. But for the people who are open to art, like so let's say we're talking about family and I see somebody getting activated. We might be doing like a creative family genome, or we might be doing inner child work, or like it's just in the same way that you pull as it shows up. Like that's what I'll do with clients. So look, well, it looks like this is coming up for you. Why don't we try to delve deeper into that with some art based thing? And I'll offer an intervention, but people are always allowed to do whatever it is that feels the most right to them. So
That makes sense. So your groups, people know they're coming in and it's got an art component to it. So you probably, well, maybe, I don't know. Do you find yourself work? Let me rephrase. How do you work with resistance around uh, art? And obviously, we don't force anyone to do anything and it's their choice. But can you just talk more about that process and how you are kind of conceptualizing that?
sure, absolutely. I've had some people who don't really feel like doing art, or they don't want to, or because of some injury, maybe they can't for now. People are always welcome to sing, to make noise, to move their bodies, to write, to speak out loud. Like it's, you don't in no way, shape, or form to do art. I have some clients actually who prefer, like I give them the art intervention, they think about it, and then they just speak out what they would do instead of doing it. And that's fine. Like I
Yeah,
just roll with whatever people, I meet people where they are. It has nothing to do with me. So I get out of the way.
that makes perfect sense. I love that. And so let's maybe talk a little bit about some of your niches. You work a lot around fat liberation, around chronic pain and illness. What um can you talk to me about your work?
Sure. So I'm a person-centered counselor. I work from like a person-centered systemic lens. I do like a decolonized style. I don't label myself that way or advertise myself that way, but that's like the framework I work from. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients, we'll look at like what systems are at play here, like where did this come from? What is the root of this issue? Like a lot of like body liberation stuff, like a lot of people's self-image, like, and like the judgment of fat bodies in this country is really rooted in racism. So we can tie all these things together and like break it down that way. So I feel like my clients get sick of me like I'm a broken record because I'm like, oh well, isn't that patriarchy? Oh, we're talking about capitalism now, and now we're talking about white supremacy and like all these systems. I'm like, so is it you, or are we just existing in this space, right? So this kind of, and I like really meet people where they're at. People can curse in sessions, people can bring their snackies, come in your pajamas. Like I'm really just like, I will meet you where you show up, and like we're gonna work on what you want, what's the most important to you. And that's my vibe. I'm
Yeah.
also a neurodiverse counselor, I'm a disabled counselor, I'm a queer counselor. And so a lot of people find me because, and a fat counselor. And so they're fitting into one of these intersectionalities. So a lot of my client base looks like my intersectionalities, and those are the people I serve the most. So
So you talked a little bit about decolonizing, and I know that that's not something that, yeah, we don't advertise in that way or really, but that is through the lens, I think, through both of us practice. And maybe we should just explain that for people who are listening and what that actually means.
sure. So part of my education as a counselor is I went to a social justice based program. And one of the things I really appreciated the most was the first thing they did was put us through a power, privilege, and oppression course, and like really highlighted like all of like the privilege and where we come from and like all these systems and everything. So it's like bringing up where colonialism and capitalism and white supremacy and all of the things that built this country show up in counseling, even how the mental health field is built on the pillars of these things, and why we don't use a lot of the things, and why some of the things in the DSM were just like, mm-mm. And like, just like how we function, like I will often help clients see where the systems are at play so that they can better advocate for themselves, and that like we're actively breaking down systems of oppression, and like they're able to do that in their day to day. So it's really just a framework of like being very aware of where like colonialism and white supremacy and racism and all of these different facets like the patriarchy and capitalism like come into play all the time, and how we navigate those things.
Yeah. Do you find any resistance around that, or when you're trying to like explain this stuff, clients, even not resistance, like they don't believe what you're saying, but just like it's so hard to remove their own internalized stuff?
Most of my clients, like, we can acknowledge that it's hard for them to remove their stuff, but they are aware of that. Like they can see it,
Yeah.
and like it just is going to take time. And when I do my intake sessions, I introduce myself in this way, and I really go over like how I like my style of counseling, and that I know that I'm not for everybody, but if you want to hang in and do the work, then like, I even have some people seeing me to help deconstruct some internalized ideas that they have. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. So they're pretty aware. They just now need the tools to get past it. And that's where things like phototherapy or art therapy in general can be so powerful. You see it on paper rather than just the thoughts in your head.
yeah. And I think like, especially working with chronically ill people, like people who are chronically ill see this, but like for every intersectionality you have, like your experience in the medical care system is going to be worse. And so like you can't not acknowledge these things when you're walking through that system. And so a lot of times I will help people with advocacy and letters and like how to navigate these systems. And like it's hard. It's really hard. Like my spouse is like a fat BIPOC, non-binary, like every intersectionality that you can be, like they are. And like the way that they're treated in the hospital system is just horrific. And so, it is one of the big passion points of mine is to like help people navigate those systems and to like deal with the day-to-day like frustrations and hardships that causes people. So.
Can you talk to what some of those self-advocacy efforts look like?
Sure. So sometimes I'll help clients create like a letter that they can bring to doctor's appointments. They're like, I'm so and so. These are the conditions I have. This is what I need from you, in order for me to be a patient here and keep the power in your court. I don't have to be a patient
Yeah.
here, right? And that's the thing. And also like remembering that like you pay these people, remembering that doctors are people who went to school just like us. They're not gods, they're not magicians, they're not anything. Like they literally went to school just like all of us did, and they're good at whatever, some of them at whatever they specialize in. And they're not all these all-knowing beings. And if somebody doesn't have the answer and they don't know how to say I don't know, and instead they gaslight you or make you feel like you're wrong about your body, okay, well then it's time to look for somebody else. Like and just like trusting yourself and trusting your body, and like not letting somebody shake that intuitive knowledge that you have.
Yeah. What do you think about self-advocacy? That's a hard one for me because it's like we shouldn't have to, and yet we
Right.
do. So I'm just curious if you could speak to that a little bit.
It is really hard because we definitely shouldn't have to. I often have these like daydreams of like, can we create a service where somebody can like tag along and like help people? And like, um, sometimes I'll offer like case management where, if you need help making appointments, or maybe you have a hard time being on the phone, or you need help navigating like your medical bills, or you need help, like we'll talk about that and see if we can like get a case manager to help with those things. Or do you have a friend who can help with these things? Or is there somebody? So like I really do help people explore like, can we create a team around you that can help you navigate? Because it shouldn't all be on us. And we shouldn't have to advocate for ourselves at all. But then we also have to acknowledge the reality of the situation, which is unfortunately, as it stands, we do. So how can we navigate those systems when we have to, kind of thing?
Yeah. So one thing that people can do is write a letter, and maybe like art therapy techniques would be before that even happens to get them clear on what it is this letter might even say. Is that accurate.
Yeah, sometimes I encourage people to like do a body scan with me and then like use like colors and textures and things like show all the different body systems that are being affected. So when you walk into the doctor, like they can have a whole body image of what is happening. Because a lot of times, like doctors will get fixated on like one symptom you said, and then you're going down a rabbit hole that's not important to you.
Yeah.
And like I encourage clients to bring this with them to show them and like, really allow the doctor to like communicate and just be like, I want to have open communication about how I'm feeling and how my body feels. And I want like to feel better as to whatever capacity that's I'm able to. And you also want to make sure we're addressing all these different areas. And so I encourage clients to do that as well.
I think that's amazing. And if a doctor isn't open to like seeing it or they make you feel stupid for bringing it, at least you have it there so that you
Yeah.
can remember what it is you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Man,
maybe we can look into other doctors.
yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, that's so powerful. That's just what I keep coming back to. This work is so powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. And it like we're talking about power differentials, and I think that's the whole point, right? It puts the power back in your court.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a doctor's office or just in your own body, because we can feel powerless to what our bodies are doing.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And even just being in like a support group for chronic conditions, like just having other people understand. Obviously all genders are welcome in my group, but it just so happens that it's mostly women most of the time. And it's like a lot of times like this, like just having other like people who understand your lived experience and like because there are like a lot of conditions, especially for women and people assigned female at birth that are just like categorized as hysteria or just completely disregarded and whatever. And just to have a whole group of people being like, no, this is obviously lived experience for all of us. And we all understand what this is like half of it. It's like community. Community is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about that? And I'm sure themes around like family dysfunction or just the inability to rely on your family, I'm sure that comes up as well. And um what does it look like to start to build community?
Yeah, like within groups or for clients generally.
Clients generally, and then if group plays a part in that, you can speak to that.
Yeah. So I always really encourage clients to look at like joining groups that are based on their interests or based on their lived experiences or based on their intersectionalities. In our city, there's some really great like groups being built around like different intersectionalities now, which is really helpful for people. Um, But if I have a client who's like reporting that they're isolated or they're having a hard time, like I run a CPTSD group. So for people who have family history and want to process together, like we do that. It's an art and music based group. So we process childhood attachment trauma to late 90s, early 2000s, like emo punk music and make art. And then, like I have a neurodiverse affirming group, I have a chronic support group. So it's convenient that I'm able to like I've created a group for all of my population so that I can be like, look, if you don't want to find community by yourself, or it's too hard to find community by yourself, or you're too tired to find community by yourself, why don't you try to meet these people and just start here and see how that goes? And then we can just at least model what community looks like before maybe you take your own independent steps that way. So.
If someone doesn't know which group to join because they might fit into a couple or they're just not sure, what do you do consultations? Is that something someone could call and say like, what am I, or would it be more like call, book an initial appointment with you, and then you might guide them towards a group?
So I can totally guide somebody to a group like with our free like 15-minute consultations we do. You definitely don't need to establish like care as an individual client before you join groups. And for clients, it just depends. Like I will ask what your like financial situation is because I don't want anything to ever be burdensome to anybody, at least to the degree that I'm able to control that. And we'll just prioritize what is the most important to you. If you want to try each of them, you can do that and see what's comfortable. Like I'm very flexible with people to make things work for whatever people need.
Which gives again that choice, autonomy, allowing to dip your toe in rather than nope, you've got to do this and stick and commit to it. And yeah.
Autonomy is a huge pillar of the way that I practice. And if you don't want to do something, you don't have to. You don't want to talk about something, you don't have to. Like it's like this is your space, your time, you're driving the bus. I'm just here to support. So.
Yeah. What else comes up for you around this? I feel like you did a really thorough job of explaining everything, but I'm curious what I'm leaving out and what I'm not asking.
That's a really open question.
Yeah.
Um,
Because we can go
yeah,
anywhere, really.
you know, I would just say I'm happy to see more counselors who are oriented in inclusivity and decolonizing work and deconstructing all the systems, and I hope that that keeps expanding. And maybe I guess talk a little bit about what like inspired me to go down the path that I've chosen. So I was going to work with like queer people, fat liberation people, like their own people, but people working on fat liberation, and neurodiverse people and people with CPTSD. CPTSD is a really big one for me.
For those listening, that's just complex post-traumatic
Complex
stress.
PTSD, right? So like people with like attachment trauma, also, but chronic illness may not have been on like my main radar, but while I was in my master's degree, my spouse had a stroke, and a lot of that happened. And then because I like how I watched that journey unfold, I did my thesis on the phototherapy group I created, and to see if that would be helpful for folks. And it was helpful. So I was like, oh, like I want to do this. Um, and it became like a really big passion of mine to help people after seeing like my spouse go through, because honestly it just wasn't something like I was aware of, like how bad, like I knew it was bad but I didn't know how bad it was until like I was like watching that happen and unfold. um and then about a year ago I got sick, so it's just been a whole thing. But I think like watching my spouse navigate the medical system where we live was really like the point where I was like, no, these are definitely the people that I want to support the most, because this is completely absurd and nobody should have to do this like alone or feel isolated in this. So
I think that's the biggest piece. Like, we're not a lot of the work we're doing, we aren't able to dismantle a whole lot, which can feel a little hopeless. But I think not doing it alone is a part of dismantle work anyway.
right.
Um, just relying on each other, right? Because in like capitalistic societies and patriarchal societies, it is about relying on one person, the head of the household, the head of the country, the head of the hospital. It's that kind of vertical kind of system that we look up to this person at the top, meaning
Yeah.
each person's like doing their own part alone. And in more
Yeah.
communal societies, it's horizontal. We look to each other to fulfill needs and roles. So um that not doing it alone is such an important necessary step before anything else can happen.
Yeah, and we talk about that all the time, how like this country really wants to push this individualistic narrative and this perfectionist narrative and this productivity narrative. And like one of the biggest ways we can start to deconstruct is to move away from those things. Like rest more, like reach out to people more, like be around folks and be yourself, and like as much as you can. Like and do less. Like absolutely do less. Like put the bar on
Yeah.
the floor.
Yes.
Just throw the bar in the trash, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm with you
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Um,
Rest is hard to do, but it's so important. I think it's important to recognize how hard, like when you start to rest, all of those internalized voices start to pop up and tell you you're doing something wrong and that you're really not that bad and you could get up right now. Like the second you start to feel a little bit rested, your body's like, all right, yep, that's enough. Okay, time to go, move on.
yeah. Yeah, so we talk a lot about like pacing and like not going through like the boom bust cycle if you can avoid it, and like spoon theory, and like some people are familiar with, some people are not familiar with. But you know, like being able to like every time you do something, take a break. Like, you know, you're not going to go from not walking for 6 months to like doing a hike tomorrow. That's probably not a great idea. So like
Yeah.
how can you pace yourself and give your body the most rest? And understanding that the same way that you need water and the same way that you need food and the same way that you need sleep, you need to rest between activities. And it's a non-negotiable need. It's not you're being lazy. There's no such thing as lazy. So
Yeah, that's something I talk about too, the nutrient metaphor. It is just like sipping water throughout the day. I mean, you can drink a gallon of water in the morning, but I don't think that actually hydrates you throughout the whole day if you don't take another sip and it's the same with sleep and rest. So sometimes I encourage even just 10-minute like eye rest breaks where we put an eye mask on or just close your eyes. I learned that through pregnancy or through feeding my baby when I was like, well, there's nothing I can do because I just have to put this bottle in their mouth. So I can't honestly, like, moms will talk about like scrolling while they're feeding. I can't even scroll on my phone. I don't know. Both my hands are occupied and all I can do is sit there. So I would close my eyes and I'm like, after a 10-minute eye break, it was like, wait, I'm this like really, I feel more energy. I feel like I was depleted 10 minutes ago and now like I feel a little bit better. And I think that was kind of the turning point for me around rest and how 10-minute breaks can be so beneficial and important. Yeah.
Yeah. And also like the idea of like resting where like you're doing nothing, not resting where you're also like reading and listening to a podcast and doing all these things, like actually not doing anything for 10 minutes, like nothing at all. So, like, I
Yeah.
feel like that's hard.
Yeah. And also, so there's that piece, right? And then people will say like, I think actually, so I'm hearing people say, but I rest all the time. I can't do anything. So I'm resting all the time. And yeah, but how often do you rest without a podcast or a book or TV on in the background? And if you are in bed, if you can't walk, then, I get it. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from you by saying don't, like, if there's nothing else you can do, please, like, allow yourself to listen to those things. But can you give yourself 10 minutes where you're just with your own thoughts to kind of gain some clarity and gain some rest in that way?
Yeah. And can you spend 10 minutes not thinking about all the things you need to be doing while you're sitting there doing nothing for 10 minutes? Because
Yeah.
that's not really resting when we're thinking about all the things we should be doing. And shoulding is part of our inner critic. So it all like leads back to, really dismantling these systems that tell us that we need to be doing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really wonderful conversation. I think I've had this conversation before, but every time I have it, it just evolves and changes. And I guess like art, right? It just kind of melds into each other. I'm loving this. What else is coming up for you around this?
I think like speaking of art, like sometimes, especially with everything going on in the world right now, I find that a lot of clients are feeling hopeless or rage filled which I mean, of course, and they don't know where to put this. And, and that applies to like chronically ill folks as well. Like there's always, like we said before, like rage to be felt there. And I really encourage people not just to go build community and be in community, but to try to make something outside of session around like all those feelings. And like, maybe you want to make something and give it to people. Maybe you want to make something and like make a hobby out of it, or maybe you want to make something and sell it and donate the proceeds to whatever it is that you are, concerned about or that's like sitting with you. And I've had so many clients be like, oh, like I started doing like printmaking or crocheting or photo work or whatever it is. And I'm selling it and donating the proceeds to XYZ community group. And that's really helped me, like, not just like I move my body. So I feel like the emotions running through me, but then I'm also like doing good at the same time. And just like being able to use art to give yourself a voice and also make a difference if you're feeling hopeless. So.
Yeah, I found that the pandemic actually really encouraged that a lot. I think people were home for the first time for so many hours a day and realized like there's nothing I can do. And so there was no guilt around, well, not no guilt, but like I think a lot of people quickly realized like, wait, okay, like this can be a normal thing. And recently that's been ramping back up, but like our lives have been ramping back up. This year has been such a wild year. It's like there's the election coming up. And I think we're just busier now than in the last 3-4 years, period. And people don't understand why it feels like they're swirling and crumbling. Even I get caught up in that. I'm like, why does it feel so like the world is on fire? I mean, the world is on fire right now. There's that. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not resting like we were 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like all of the collective trauma that is occurring around the world right now. on top of the fact that a lot of people can't make ends meet because of inflation and the economy and whatever, that's a lot of stuff to hold on top of your regular day to day. And then when you look at people with like multiple intersectional identities, you look at chronically ill people, you look at moms, you look at people with trauma, like all of that is just so compounded. Like, of course it feels this way. Of course it feels this way, but we're not alone in it. We're all sitting in it. I tell my clients all the time, like, we are rowing the boat. The boat may have holes in it, but we are all in this boat together. We're just getting through it.
Yeah, and we're just playing like little whack-a-mole or like plugging the hole with your fingers. It's like, okay, now it's your turn. Okay, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm like really real with my client. I'm like, yes, all of these things, absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. It does feel that shitty, and how can we find some support in that?
Yeah. And that's where again, getting it out on paper, getting it out creatively, or even if it's just in your mind, you had kind of mentioned that earlier. Like if you're inviting a client to do something artistically, it can be just visualizing whatever it is you're asking them to do. Or like if they come up with, you ask them this thing that sparks their own thing, they do something different and they just think about it. My own therapist, she's probably getting so tired of me. She's like, she's a dance and movement therapist. Well, actually, she just uses a lot of dance and somatics, and I never move in session with her. And she's just like moving across the whole room, and she's like, it's okay, you can just watch. And I'm like, this is wonderful. Like, I very much enjoy just watching and imagining myself moving, but like getting up and doing the thing. I still haven't quite figured it out. Maybe it's just a little bit of like PDA, maybe it's a little bit of, I don't know. It could be that, but and fear of my body, which I know is like a lifelong process since I do live with pain and flare ups. But it's beautiful to have that permission. Like, yeah, you can just watch. You don't have to do the thing.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because I see a somatic therapist who's probably equally as sick of me. And like I don't do the things either. And like she'll be like, what do your feet feel like on the floor? And I'm like, feet. And like I just feel so and it's so funny because like we're clinicians and we do all these things with people, but like we're just like everybody else in session, y'all. Like we are no different than anybody else.
Exactly.
We're just yeah, like
Yeah.
and that's why I just let people show up how they are because and I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm not gonna make as much eye contact with you, and I'm gonna fidget, and I'm gonna drink my drink, and I'm gonna show up in all these ways because I'm gonna show up authentically because I want you to be able to show up authentically. So like I try to be as me as possible in session so that people can feel like they can be as much them as they are in session. So
yeah. I think that's what, as you were describing your experience, like to feet on the floor, that's what came to mind. No matter what the modality is, even if it's CBT, okay, even if we're just trying to challenge thoughts, if you have a therapist who's like, well, have you thought about it this way? And you're like, no, and fuck that way of thinking. And they're like, all right, cool. Then that's like, sometimes that's all we need is just that validation that it's okay to say no, which I think goes back to decolonizing. It's okay to say no.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
recognizing that there has been historically real danger in saying no, especially for marginalized identities. So I just want to acknowledge that too. It's okay to say no. We should be able to say no. And it doesn't always come without consequences. So just be aware of that and also strengthen ourselves so that we can handle or do the thing that needs to happen once the consequence has been implemented.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell clients all the time, like, you're driving the bus. If there's anything, like, if I do something or offer you something, or, like we're like working on something and you're like, I don't want to do that. Like I said before, like my clients who don't want to do art, but they want to speak it out loud or they want to explore it in a different way, or they just want to talk. That's fine. Like, you never have to worry about being like, I don't really want to do that. Okay. So we're not going to do that then. We'll do something else. Like, you're not going to offend me. I didn't create half the stuff that I do with you. It like, and even if I did, like, everything is just about what fits you the best, and everybody's so different. Like, it's, we're not mind readers, so we're going to have to suggest things, and we'll learn as you kind of hone that in as we go. So, And some days a somatic thing may feel good and some days it might not. And some days art might feel good and some days it might not. And like all of that's okay. So
Yeah, and not trying to make too much meaning of that. It's just it doesn't
yeah.
feel it could be any meaning. It could be because your body's, like, low in vitamin D today. I don't know. It could literally be that simple. Or it could be
Yeah.
like you had a, like, traumatic flashback that really took a lot of resources out of you. Maybe even sort of unconsciously, it's a thing that happened at work. You had this, like, reminiscent experience of childhood, and then you really don't even think about it because you just go right back into work, and that physically affects you so much, and a lot of this work is bringing out some of that awareness slowly and titrated so that it's not overwhelming, but we do wanna acknowledge these things, and know that we can't always make meaning. We can't always know exactly why we're feeling so fatigued or why we're feeling in so much pain today, like, there's just so much we don't know about our bodies and how the mind and body is connected.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just because you don't wanna, and that's also okay. That's fine. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Autonomy and advocacy and breaking down systems and strengths and all of these things are definitely the pillars of what I feel like to be the most affirming type of care for chronically ill people and for a whole lot of other people too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, bringing strengths in. Sometimes people are like, "Okay, cool, so my strength is kindness," and I'm like, "Yeah, your strength is kindness." Like, that means that when you are having a hard time, you actually have a stronger ability to, 1, be kind to yourself, or 2, show up in this way. Um, it also means that when you have to assert yourself, it might be harder for you, but that's okay, we can learn how to do that, so I love strengths.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I feel like you inviting me onto this podcast has really helped me feel connected to community. Like to have another spooning therapist reach out and be like, hello from somewhere else in the ether. I was like, how cool. So I
I
really
love that I'm
appreciate
actually just in Atlanta, but we did meet through, like, a national Facebook group and somehow are right here, so I love that, but I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. And I do have a community for I can't remember if I told you I have an online community for therapists, off of
Yeah.
Facebook, so I'm happy to have you there. Did you actually, you might have signed up already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said
Yeah.
that no matter.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to grow that at the moment, but also trying not to overload myself.
I hear that. I'm always like, all these big idea. I've really come to like, okay, I have a journal of big ideas, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Like if I have energy one day, I'll get around to one of these things. Otherwise, it's just on the paper and that's fine.
Well, and this is a part of what I am trying to build because I think we all have that experience. And so again, not doing it all alone. I really want to grow this library of videos for clients. We're all building it together. It isn't this like, I have to create this 12-week program. I have to do this thing that's going to like cure this client. And it's like, that's one, not even but I think we can all get stuck in that. How do I help? How do I fix? How do I do? And instead it's just how do we just support each other? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like reminding ourselves to like go back to the basics of like, it's about holding space. It's not about us becoming the holders of all knowledge in the entire world ever. Like that's not the game we're playing. We're just showing up and showing up the best we can.
Yeah, knowing what role you play as a therapist, and it's not God and it's
Yeah.
not the universe. It's just we're active listeners.
Yeah.
And we support you along your journey without judgment, and it's a rare find, like to be able to move through the world without judgment. So,
Yeah. And really at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with modalities at all. Like some of us pick up these things and they're so cool. Don't get me wrong. A lot of the things that we're doing, absolutely very cool, right? Like we're learning all these things and all these skills or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just about the relationship. And we all know that. But I think sometimes it's hard to keep that in the forefront because you get swept away with these like, oh, well, I should be all the shoulds. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, the
Yeah,
therapeutic relationship prevails.
yeah, I had a teacher in grad school who was like, I don't know how we got on this topic, but I remember her saying that she just kind of realized, like, she always knew, of course, client-centered, Rogerian, blah, 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 but, like, she only just now, like, I don't know, like 10 years into her career realized, like, that is it, and that's so now that's all she focuses on, and I'm like, how did, this is a little bit of judgment coming up, but I'm like, how did it take you that long? Although she was very type A. And I just realized like that type A personality, I mean, you have to be perfect. You have to be productive. You have to do the thing right. There has to be like an end goal. Like just focusing on the relationship is like so lofty to someone who, and it's interesting. I think I grew up always trying to be very type A, but I don't think that was ever really in me. Like I don't think I'm naturally a type A person because every time I go into that, I crash and burn hard. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. Well, and type A has some consequences to it too, like with stress, but I think it is, I think, the systems are really built to kind of like pit clinicians against each other and like who has the most fancy trainings and the most certificates and the most whatever. And like, you can really get like lost in the sauce sometimes. And I think having clinicians who are grounded in like the populations you're working with or what you're passionate about or what, and you're just like kind of like counselor friends to like ground you and remind you like, no, like you're solid. Like even if you did nothing else, you're good. Like it's okay. Because it's really about how you're showing up and not really about what you're doing. Because
yeah, exactly. Yes, that was part of why I allowed myself. Somatic experiencing is a 3-year program, but I've taken a year off between each year. And that was really hard that first time I did that. Like it just felt like I was quitting or I was like, I'm never going to get this. Now I'm like, I don't care. Like I've learned really great skills in each year. And I will probably do year 3 next year, but I need that time, which is that's actually like a hallmark of SE work is giving time, going slowly. So it's kind of an honor to that too, I think.
oh,
Cool.
Yep. And you're modeling listening to your body so your clients can do that too.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you ever feel like sometimes we're asking them, like I feel like sometimes I'm asking my clients to go too slow or because I get a lot of pushback, but I just can't now that I know what I know, I just can't go back.
I don't know that I have that issue. I think because of like my neurodiverse profile, I think like I can't spend too long on things. Like I literally cannot, like I just can't do it. I mean, I can circle back as many times as you need, but there's something that drives me to just keep going. I don't know. So like I think we're
Well,
just
I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you there. Like should clarify because I have clients who come in who only know somatic work as either these like extreme kind of body movements or like trauma release exercises that they saw on TikTok, or it's I don't know how to sit. Don't ask me to like be in this moment for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, I'm not, because I can't. We're not doing that. So I do move kind of fast, but then I always keep coming back to the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I relate to that a lot. And like, speaking of social media, like a thought that comes to my mind is like, so I really encourage, I know like a lot of people have a lot of big feelings about this, but I really encourage people to bring whatever you saw on TikTok, bring it into session. Let me know. What is it? Like, do you feel like you have this chronic condition because it relates to all these symptoms? Okay, let's explore that. Let's look up the specialist that can rule it out for you if that's what you're concerned about. Do you feel like you're neurodiverse? Okay, let's take some screeners. Like, let's see what, like, if that's the case. Like, I don't think that there's any harm in exploring things that people are feeling connected to, because if it's drawing you in, it is more than likely relevant for some reason, and we can explore that together. So like, I'm like, bring me your TikTok videos, bring me your whatever. Like, let's look at that together. People will be like, I saw this thing on TikTok. I'm like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to. It's okay. I'm not mad at you.
No, I'm glad you said that and kind of called me out / in there a little bit because I'm like that with diagnoses. Like, yes, tell me all about it. What resonated with you? For some reason, these trauma release exercises. So I have to look at this for myself, but they really trigger me. I'm just like, I don't know. I just see these like short clips of like moving your body in dramatic ways as a way to like get rid of the feeling. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I think when I'm hearing and I'm very big on like acceptance and not avoiding and working through but you have just invited me to even bring that invitation back to my clients. Okay, but what does resonate with you about this traumatic, this TRE, this traumatic release exercise? And then some psycho ed around what that actually looks like in session and titrating. But sometimes too, we do want to just shake and get it out, and I'm okay with that. I just think that a lot of times the narrative I hear with it coming in session is like, this is going to help me get rid of this feeling. And it's like, it's not. That's not how this works. And I'm sorry that like these somatic coaches online are making you feel that way.
Yeah.
But yes, the invitation is open to bring it into session. Let's process it together. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, let's explore, let's process, let's be curious. Like, and and with that, you could be like, we're never going to get rid of feelings, but we can move through them in a way. And if you're looking to move through a feeling, okay, like, let's explore what might feel good for you, or, based on what you're bringing in. But yeah, I just think it's funny because I think clients have picked up on the fact that there's a taboo around social media in the clinician circles, because the way that a lot of people approach it is like, they're so nervous to like just say that they saw something. But honestly, y'all, I will say, like, if it wasn't for looking up like peer-reviewed research articles on certain things or consulting social media or whatever, like, I don't know that my spouse would be around, because we had to do some serious like self-informing to get to advocate, right? So like, people mock it, all they want to mock it, but at the same time, we are living in an age of information. And if you're being called to something or you're connected to something, like, sometimes women or people who feel at birth, like, looking up stuff is the only way they have to get the medical care they need. So like, I'm very just all about like, bring me what you got and we'll explore it together. Like, it's whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So
yeah, I'm with you there. And it was helpful to hear you remind me of that. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to leave people with today?
I don't think so. I'm thankful to be able to talk to you and form this relationship, and I look forward to working with you more too. And I do have some groups. So like we talked about before, like if anybody's interested, I guess I could share that information with you, and
I'll put it in the show notes. And do you have public social medias or no?
No, not for like this kind of thing. But if you're interested in like my counseling practice stuff, my practice's website is Live Well Sav. So it's like Live Well and then SAV, like for Savannah. And all of my groups are on there, my individuals on there, and then our practice serves Savannah and all of Georgia remotely. So,
and you have an Etsy shop.
I do have an Etsy shop. Okay. So I crochet stuff. I do. I have a small business, and that is the Counseling Zebra on social media. I originally started crocheting as a way to pay off medical debt because we're drowning in it. We still are. But now it's just become more of like a passion project where I'm like, well, the debt will get paid as it gets paid off, but I'm just really enjoying the process. So I make like cute little things like the zebra back here. Had to make an EDS mascot, obviously. Yes. His name is Rice Krispie because his joints snap, crackle, and pop. I make like weighted items. I make cane covers, like crochet cane covers. I'm about to make a series of like wheelchair crochet decor thingies, and like wheelchair bags. I want to make like a whole disability series of stuff. And then I just make weird stuff that catches my eye. Like I made like some like booby plant hangers because I do a lot of like queer markets and so it's just whatever.
That's amazing. I am so impressed. I love that. Yeah, if you ever want to come back on and just talk about your art, I would love to have you.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing, Lauren. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. If you learned something new today, consider writing it down in your phone notes or journal and make that new neural pathway light up. Better yet, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram, email me, or leave a voice memo for us to play on the next show. The way you summarize your takeaways can be the perfect little soundbite that someone else might need. And lastly, leaving a review really helps others find this podcast, so please do if you found this episode helpful. And P.S., clicking subscribe ensures you'll be here for the next episode. See you then!